Hello, everyone. This is Christina with Black Tea News, and I want to talk about a life changing trip that I went on. I had the privilege of going to Israel, and I got to see the places where Jesus walked and where he taught, where he discipled the disciples, where he got to walk on the sea, where he healed a blind man. I got to see the Garden of Gethsemane, the places where they believe he was crucified and where he laid after he was crucified and where he rose again and where he even went to the disciples after he had risen from the dead. But I also got to do more than just spiritual things. In Israel, I got to go to the Nova festival site. I got to talk to a hostage who had been in captivity in Gaza. I got to talk to the people who were still mourning and waiting for hostages to come home. I got to talk to people who survived the attack and lived very close on the border and who just survived by the skin of their teeth and got to talk about their perspective. I got to go to the north of the country, to the Golan Heights, and go through barracks and see signs that don't cross here, there's landmines, and just learn about the seriousness that they face from Syria and those threats up there. And it was just a wonderful, eye-opening trip that I highly recommend people going on if they can. And I was very privileged to have that opportunity. So I look forward to in the next couple of videos just talking about day by day what happened during that journey, especially like when I got baptized in the River Jordan and the dinner that we had, a Shabbat dinner with a family, going through the Holocaust Museum, so many incredible things that happened in this trip. And I'm just going to break it down day by day. This first video, I'll be talking about how basically the trip came about, and then my journey in the airport and dealing with security and things like that. And then in the next video, we'll get to day 1, day 2, day 3, etc. But before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website because it does cost for me to stream and to run my website and all that stuff. So you guys can support. I very much appreciate it and appreciate you guys. You guys can also check out different merch that we have also in the store. I have different books that you guys can check out as well. And I have fiction, nonfiction, and t-shirts and all kinds of different things. So God bless you guys. And I want to hop to it. Well, first things first, I was invited by a group named CUFI. Now, I'm embarrassed to say I did not know what CUFI was at the time when I was reached out by Destiny with the organization. And actually, I asked ChatGPT what it was. And they're like, this is John Hagee's organization. I'm like, oh, I know who John Hagee is. And but they liked my content. I was already making content that I guess people call it pro-Israel content. It's just things I talk about, pop culture and religion, and I talk about politics and news and things like that. And so my opinion, which I don't want to dive completely, in this podcast about October the 7th, was that was obviously a terrible thing. And of course, Israel has a right to defend themselves. You have Hamas running Gaza and pledging that they will kill the Jews and anyone in Israel, I guess, if they get the opportunity again. So they obviously need to be stopped. They had their hostages. They didn't only kill people in Israel, they killed people from different countries, also killed Americans. They also kidnapped Americans. And so this was a threat that needed to be dealt with. I keep referring it to as you can't have a monster living at the foot of your children's bed. You have to do something about that. And to me, I don't know, a lot of it seemed like really kind of common sense policies. And I was very intrigued by so many people who seem to have I guess, a childish view and even an immoral view, I think, of the warfare. So I would definitely talk about it. And then I saw other people with wild conspiracies like Candace Owens and, Tucker Carlson, that I would address. And so, I was already talking about the content. That's not the main thing that I talk about on my channel, but I was talking about those sorts of things. So, um, you know, CUFI saw that I was talking about some of those things. And so they reached out and decided to invite me on this trip. So I looked into them. And for anyone who is with the CUFI organization, which is Christians United for Israel, I just want you to know that your reputation precedes you. I'm a little embarrassed. I didn't know what it was before because everyone in Israel seemed to know what that was. Like I wore a hat that said CUFI, and so many people were like, oh, I love your hat. I love your hat. I love your hat. And so many people were like, oh, I love CUFI. I love CUFI. And then I got to see, they donated money to like to this organization that brings in, Jewish people from around the world. And there was a renovated like bomb shelter that we stayed in for a little bit, and that was renovated by CUFI. And we went to an organization that does heart surgery on children, and they bring children from all over the world, and they also train doctors so they can go back to their countries and take care of the children. A lot of money was donated from CUFI. So they do tremendous work. And when we go to different hotels and we're like, we're with CUFI, I'm like, oh, we love CUFI. We know CUFI. We love CUFI. So if you're associated with the organization at all, if you're a donor or whatever, just know that the reputation precedes them. And a lot of people think very highly of the organization, and you should be really proud of the work that they do. So anyway, I got a message from my different socials from Destiny, from CUFI, asking me if I would like to go on this trip. And so I talked to my family about it. My dad is just like immediately like, you should go. My eldest sister's like, you should go. That's amazing. And so my other sisters are like, that sounds dangerous. I don't know about that. And this was prior to the ceasefire agreement. So there was still like ongoing war and things to be concerned about. I think there's still like things to being concerned about. Because even after the ceasefire, I'm like, okay, well, they just released all these prisoners who did terrible things. I'm like, what if they're out in the wild? And they're still concerned even after the ceasefire. But they're like, we'll analyze things on the ground and so on. If it's too dangerous, then we won't go. But Destiny had been through some pretty dangerous things herself, just going on different trips. So I also had like an obligation, I usually go to like Motor City Comic Con, and I had paid for a table, and I was going to sell books and things like that. And so me and my sister, we came out with a book actually recently called Bigger, and we were going to sign books there together, and so on. And so we just had this kind of grandiose plan, and obviously I wouldn't be there. So but I was just like, just pray about it. What do you feel in your spirit? Like, what do you feel? And I felt good about it. I'd pray, and I just feel like I felt good about it in my spirit. I guess is what I'll say. So I reached out to Destiny. She answered my questions about the trip, and so I waited a little bit to cancel my Motor City like Comic Con table, whatever, but I did ultimately cancel it and just started preparing for the trip. So there were some costs that I had to take care of, and I did have some very generous donors who decided to give. I wasn't like, hey, I'm going to go to Israel. I didn't really announce that on my live streams. I didn't want people to know where I was going, when I would be there. I felt like that was a little dangerous. So I just would allude that there's an opportunity for me coming up. I'm going to have some really good content. I'm excited. If you can support, go to the website. And so when it got a bit closer, I put out an email, that was still like, vague, but saying, hey, there's a good opportunity and so on. So then I decided to do a more specific email to people who had supported in the past. And there are people who were like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you're going on this trip. I think that these trips are really important. I can't wait to see your content. Thank you for what you're doing. And there was someone who had given a good amount in the past, but it was some years ago. And they said, LOL, Israel, like, you need to repent. Don't ever contact me again, which I thought was odd. I was taken aback by it. I guess I don't know why that particular person followed me. Maybe it's because of my COVID content and stuff. They're actually someone from out of the country. They weren't like a US supporter, but beyond like all the Israel Gaza war stuff and or how you feel about the Jews in general, it's still a place where a lot of biblical things happen, and I've been very open about the fact that I'm a Christian on my page. So I was just baffled, like, before I got the itinerary, my dad's like, you got to see if you can get baptized in the Jordan River. I'm like, I'm like, I don't know, if they're gonna do that, Dad, which they did end up doing. So I did get baptized in the Jordan River, so that was cool. But I was very excited to do a lot of things, to walk where Jesus walked and have those sorts of experiences. I I was really surprised by some of the experiences that I had. There were things that I didn't know, like, the city of David was a site to go to, that I could be standing in, like, David's palace. Like, that blew my mind. It just blew my mind. Like, I know that there's people who didn't even believe that David existed, and there was, like, archaeological findings, that there was, like, an enemy of Israel that, like, bragged about defeating, like, the children of Israel, the children of David or something like the house of David or something like that, and because of that, they're like, "Oh, okay, well, these were real, this was a real kingdom," and so on. People, initially, I guess I don't know how many people, but there were folks who used to believe that the Israelites, I guess, kinda just made up this king figure. Um, I I guess to give them more street cred or something like that, but it was David was a real figure, and so I was just amazed that that site existed and got to see so much, and I look forward to sharing, some really cool content with you guys, about that. So, I was just excited to go as a Christian. Politics aside, I was just excited to do that, and a lot of people go there to see the holy sites, and I'm grateful for a lot of it being, frankly, in the hands of the Israeli government, because there were some sites that I would have liked to have gone to, like I would have liked to go to Bethlehem, for example, but that's in more dangerous territory. So something to just consider for folks out there. Anyway, um, I was a little surprised by, that response, but, decided to, respect them and not contact them again. So anyway, I started preparing for my trip, which included getting a passport because I haven't gone out of the country really since I was in the 10th grade and went to the Philippines. So I had this little baby passport, not a baby passport, but I was a youngin' then, so I got an emergency passport, which, you know, I was way more stressed than I needed to be, I guess, about getting that emergency passport. When I went to the office, they were really chill about it. But you just have to wait till like 2 weeks before you go on your trip. You have to have some kind of information about the fact that you're going on the trip, like the hotel information, flight information, whatever. Make sure that you have like a birth certificate or a passport to prove your citizenship. Now, I don't know, from what I was seeing online, it was at, like, their discretion whether or not they were going to accept my, like, old passport because I still had that. So I'm like, "Okay, well, I need to have this birth certificate." And usually my mom kept track of all that stuff, and, my dad because my mom passed away last year, my dad lost all of our birth certificates when he was, like, going through documents and things. So the day of my appointment, I had to go get my birth certificate, like, at the, like, county office and stuff, and then get a copy made of it, and then go down to my appointment and stuff. So that was a little added stress, to everything. So, um, but I was just there for some hours, and there was a point when they weren't going to make it the day of, because they said that they still had some time to send it to me, but there was something that I needed to get to register in Israel to go, and they didn't know how long that they didn't know how long that would take, so they made sure that I got my passport that day. So I got the passport that day. An interesting thing that happened before I went to Israel, which didn't have anything to do with CUFI, but, there was a conference, it was a Christian Leaders Summit, by the Combat Anti-Semitism movement, and it's put on by the International Christian Embassy of Jerusalem. That was really cool. So, a friend of mine reached out to me and was said they're looking for young people, and I got to go to Orlando. Just full disclosure, I it was a paid trip. They didn't pay me to go, but the hotel, the flight, all that was taken care of, and the food, they certainly fed us. And it was on this, like, wonderful resort. So, which we didn't really have time to enjoy because it was a jam-packed 2 days. And so I had to do that for 2 days, and then I came home on, it was like Thursday, Friday, I was at that conference, and then I came home and we were, on the Saturday, and we were at the airport for a while because my brother had a different flight, but he came too, so we waited for him, and then we came home, and then Sunday, I had to, like, pack everything. I packed some stuff on Saturday too, but, I got stuff together, and then Monday morning, I was at the airport at 7 a.m. to go to my domestic flight to go to New York, to then go to Israel. So I had a very, very busy sort of week, leading into that. But what was interesting about the conference, which they had some really good speakers, Seth Dillon was there, you had Officer Brandon Tatum was there, Ami Kozak came and did some jokes and stuff, which he did jokes about the airplane experience and El Al. When I tell you that his jokes were accurate, they were accurate as far as dealing with the security at the airport. But I'll get to that. So an interesting thing that happened at the conference was that we had a Shabbat dinner on Friday night, and I had a sinus issue. I have sinus problems, and it'll feel like there's pain in my nostrils, and it's kind of flaring up, and then it'll kind of curve up here, and so it'll hurt. I have like a face mask I'll wear that'll apply heat and stuff, um, but I will get nauseous, which I hate because when I was younger, I would never throw up or anything, but past couple years, it came with a sinus issue, and it's it's weird and it's rough, and so I'm like, my head really hurts. I think it's gonna be one of those days that if I eat something, it's just gonna go back up. So I was contemplating whether or not I was even gonna go down to this Shabbat dinner. So I decided to just kind of press my way, and so I went down to the, start going down to Shabbat dinner, and so I shared an elevator with a woman named Grace and her husband, and they, lived in California now, but they used to live in Michigan, and I'm from Michigan, so we chit-chatted, and so on the way there, I mentioned that I was about to go to Israel, and so right before we got into the dining hall, she asked if she could pray for me, and so I said, "Sure." So she started praying for me, and so she prayed, and so she said, like, I just see you calling people to intercession. I see you, calling, people to intercession, and I see you praying, in Israel. I see you praying in, for the people, and I see you, your voice going out like it's a trumpet, just going out like it's a trumpet. And she said other things as well, but those are things I kind of clung to. So when she finished praying, she's like, "Well, how do you feel about that?" And I said, "Well, I'm an influencer, so I there are a lot of people who follow me." And so she's like, "Oh," and I said, "And I do sing, so my voice, does go out and stuff." And so, you know, I was grateful for her prayer. And so I went in there and found my family, and then there was someone, that I met earlier in the day who also joined us at the table, and I felt really sick, and so I love challah bread. There's challah bread on the table, and I'm like, "Man, I'd really like to get through the Shabbat dinner," but I just knew if I ate anything, it was gonna go right back up. I'm sorry, this is TMI, but, my eldest sister's like, "Okay, well, there's some medication in my room if you wanna take that." So I took her, like, hotel key, went up to her room, and I never came back down. I took some medication, and I did throw up, so, I guess it was good thing I didn't bother with the dinner because there went my lunch anyway, and, I actually watched that Megyn Kelly, interview with Ben Shapiro while I was in her room, just kinda waiting for it to end, and then they took a really long time with their dinner and, presentation or whatever, so I ended up going back to my hotel room. By the time it was all kinda over that night, I felt better, but, I was glad that I went down and met Grace for that meantime, and then they told me Grace, who prayed for me, won a trip to Israel. She won a trip to Israel. There was one trip to give out. They were doing this giveaway. I didn't bother entering because I'm like, I'm going to Israel. I want other people to share in the experience, if they can. And praise the Lord, Grace, who was obedient or stepped out or whatever to pray for me, was blessed in that way. So I'm like, even though it wasn't for me, I took it as if that was for me, and just greater confirmation that God was doing something and was in what I was doing and what I was walking in, going to Israel and stuff. So that was a lovely surprise. And so anyway, we left Orlando, went back home. I prepared for my trip. I got a new backpack because the other one was like bursting at the seams, and just packed on my stuff, and then went to the airport in the morning, on Monday, and then I took and by the way, this is during the shutdown, and so I'm concerned about the shutdown and whether or not the flights are going to be delayed, because we had some delays when we went to Orlando, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what if, because I had to meet everybody at 1. Our flight wasn't gonna be till 5, but I was just concerned, because I want to take a later flight at 9, because I'm like, what if it's delayed? So I made sure I got the 9 o'clock flight. I mean 7 o'clock flight. Ended up, 2 hours later in New York. So I was there like 9. So it was like everything was pretty much on time. I think it was a little delayed. It was a little delayed, but not much. And so I ended up walking to this hotel um that was like a throwback to, I don't know, 60s or something. It was a very odd kind of looking hotel, and just waited for everybody else to arrive. We had such a good group, man. I was so worried about not liking the people I was going to be traveling with. That was something that I told my family, man, I hope I like these people, because I'm extremely introverted. I if I'm alone with my computer in my room, that's a good day for me. So I was like, man, I hope they're not annoying. I hope I like them. I hope we don't get in any kind of beef, or they don't grate my nerves or anything like that. I knew I'd have my own hotel room and things like that, but I just, you still got to travel with all these people, and I already missed them. Like, I miss going on being on an adventure with them, and I just, I'm ready for a reunion with all these folks. So we just had an incredible time, and you meet people and you're like, that was okay. I never need to see you again. But I feel like some of these people that these are gonna be lifelong friends and lifelong connections. And so we just had an incredible experience together, and I'm really grateful that I had it with this group. So anyway, when we got together to at 1 o'clock in the El part of JFK, that's when it started to get a little intense. When they started questioning us about, why we're going to Israel. And I was one of the first people. Like, Destiny went over because she was like our group leader, and then they called me over and started grilling me. And I have my bag, I have a backpack, I have like a personal carry-on, and I have my suitcase. And they're like, "Do you wanna put that down? Set that down?" I'm like, "No, I'm good." He's like, "'Cause you just look uncomfortable. You just look uncomfortable." I'm like, "Oh," put the bag down, like, "Why are you going to Israel?" And I'm like, "Oh, tourism, like, we're with a group, and, we're just gonna, like, look at, see different sites." And so I'm like, "Well, where are you going?" So I'm gonna start listing off some of the sites I can think of, and, they're like, "Well, why were you invited?" I'm like, "Because I make pro-Israel content." And then they're like, "Well, why do you do this?" I'm like, Why do I do it?" I'm like, Because after October the 7th, I just, saw, people spreading a lot of lies, and I don't like lies." You know? So they're just really, like, really, really grilling, like, "Well, how many followers do you have?" And all kinds of different stuff. "How many's in your group?" Like, and so I tried to just answer them normally, but they were really, like, going on for a while, and I guess, after they grilled me for a minute, they didn't really ask everybody else who was in our group a ton of, like, questions. But after it was over, they're just like, "Thank you for what you're doing. I really appreciate it." And I understand that they have to be strict with their security. I totally get it, but it is intense if you have to end up going to Israel. It is intense. And it's also intense when you're leaving Israel and going back home. And they searched everything that I had. I had to take everything out, and they searched each item with like a little device. So I don't know what ended up flagging my passport or whatever that made them do that, but it was harder um on the trip coming back into the United States than it was going into Israel. The flight itself was okay. It was jam packed, and it was very I slept through a lot of it, I guess. So as far as odd cultural things, the oddest thing was I've never been on a flight where so many people were like walking around and doing stuff, and a lot of people had their shoes off. So that was a little odd. Um, there was I was on the aisle seat, and there was two people next to me, and there was a girl who was in between us, and I don't know why she got up and left and went somewhere else. So I ended up having an empty seat next to me. And so I'm um a big girl, obviously. And so I did have a bit of like anxiety, like, gosh, I don't know how much space I'm gonna have. I hope it's not like you have to pay for a second seat. I'm not that big yet. And I don't intend to be. And I've been like walking and trying to lose weight for a minute now. And so I guess it was unnecessary anxiety, but anxiety nonetheless. But the woman who ended up like staying like on the other side of the aisle, she's just like, be comfortable. Like she put down the middle tray and was like, be comfortable. Like just, we got the space, be comfortable. She was very nice, very nice. And the flight was 10 hours. And when it was over, we were in Israel. We left 5 p.m. in JFK and ended up in Israel like at 10 in the morning, something like that, I think. So, and thus our journey began. So that's where day one will start off, and I'll explain the adventure from there. But really grateful for the opportunity, and really excited to keep talking about this and just explaining all the stuff that happened. So God bless you guys. Thank you for your interest, and let's keep going.